Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to talk about the specialization based artillerist. This is an exciting endgame build for the class that is, let's say, seen as better than the swiftness one. We discussed the swiftness artillerist, by the way, last week. I'm going to link that video in the description below. A very viable build, by the way. However, today we're going to focus on specialization as a main stat. This one is better simply because it does more damage. At the same time, it's also a little bit clunkier to play in that sense, and it's a little bit more high risk, high reward type of build. So we're going to take a look at everything same as with the swiftness build. At the combat stats, engravings, gems, cards, rotation, skill build, skill tripod priority. Then we're gonna, at the end of the video, we're gonna talk about the gearing options, right? With legendary and also relic type of gear. Let's just get going. So the build is based on specialization, thus the specialization stat is the priority. Now I highly recommend that you get a minimum of 1300 specialization just so that this build actually would feel rewarding enough for the high risk that it has. Regardless of how much specialization you have here, you're still going to be stuck inside your bombardment mode, right? So the higher the specialization, thus the higher the damage those bombardment skills do, the more rewarded you become for the same amount of risk. So I recommend a minimum of 1300 specialization and the rest being placed in your secondary stat. Now, secondary combat stat, which can be either crit or swiftness. Now, this depends on your personal flavor. I prefer to go for crit because I'm thinking that if I am playing a specialization build which is innately very slow, I would just want to get the most out of it. And just to wrap up the combat stats, if you're still wearing legendary grade accessories, these are the maximums you can have. You can have 1500 in the specialization and then a 500 or almost 485, let's say 490 in your secondary stat. From assuming they're 100 quality, of course, getting specialization on all 5 legendary accessories gives you 1350 points of the main stat you choose. And with the pet, that's another 135. You would get to 1485 points plus the little bit that you have from the books and potions. It would get you just a smidgen over 1500, right? So we're gonna pretend that these are our stats based on the maximum achievable with legendary grade. Now, if you have relic grade accessories, you can again take specialization on every single piece of accessory, and on necklace you can take a little bit of your secondary stat. And since relic grade accessories give you a little bit more stats than legendary, you will be able to reach a specialization value of 1700 almost, and then your secondary stat, might that be swiftness or crit, will be at somewhere around 550. Cool. So that is the distribution that you should go for. There is another way where you not only take your secondary stat on the necklace, but you also assign a ring to it. So for example, with relic grade accessories, you would have 500 of whatever, swiftness or crit, and then another 200 from a ring. So you would have 700 but a little bit fewer specialization. Like you would still play 1500 specialization, but you would have 200 points more in your secondary stat, right? And that is the compromise. Very doable like that. Also, if you feel that you're missing just that bit more of your secondary stat for you as a player to feel great behind the keyboard playing such a build, then absolutely do it. Don't be afraid to experiment, and don't be afraid to adjust the highest, best, most efficient theoretical things that we're talking about to your playstyle, your group, your pre-made, etc. Right? Cool. Now, in terms of engravings, let's just get that out of the way. These 3 are your bread and butter, right? You play Grudge, you play Firepower Enhancement, and you play Barrage Enhancement. Firepower Enhancement and Grudge have to be level 3. However, there is an option where if you play, for example, 4 level 3s plus 1 level 1s, you can have Barrage Enhancement be that engraving which only has 5 points into it, right? However, if you play 4 full engravings or 5 full engravings with relic grade accessories, these 3 should be maxed out at level 3. Other choices, other great choices for you as engravings can potentially be a Cursed Doll. This is a fantastic choice as a 4th. Adrenaline, another fantastic choice as a 4th. Keen Blunt is another great choice, assuming your secondary stat is crit, so you can take as much out of Keen Blunt as possible. Spirit Absorption is another choice that players play, assuming your secondary stat is crit. Awakening for level 1, even if you play, for example, 4+1, you can very easily max out Barrage Enhancement, right, as one of the level 3 engravings, and play Awakening as the level 1 engraving, simply because Specialization does increase the damage of our Awakening skill, so why not, right? These are the choices that I would recommend here. You have plenty to choose from. You don't have enough space. As I said, you don't have enough space as a Specialization artillerist. You need more engraving slots, right? Because there's so many cool ones that you can play, and they fit so well with this build, and they scale also so nicely that you don't have enough. But these are my choices. Bottom line is that I will choose Cursed Doll as my 4th choice, simply because out of all of the engravings we discussed, it's the one that gives me the most DPS output. As a 5th choice, I will have a very tough time in between Adrenaline, Keen Blunt, and Spirit Absorption. Now, Adrenaline is great to play whether you're playing crit as a secondary stat or swiftness, simply because it increases your attack power by a little bit, and also it gives you the extra crit rate. However, it comes at the cost of another mental process that you need to keep in mind while you play, which is the adrenaline buff has to be on you at all times. So it requires another little step in your brain. Keen Blunt is great if you play crit as a secondary stat, because of the crit damage increase, and also Spirit Absorption makes the whole Specialization build so much nicer to play, so much, let's say, easier to play than if you wouldn't have this and you would play, for example, crit as a secondary. You would be, you know, still as a turtle. So yeah, for the purposes of today's video, let's just go with Spirit Absorption, right? But normally maybe I would actually choose in between these two. However, it's more important for you to feel happy and to do mechanics properly and to feel good behind the keyboard, yet still do a lot of damage because of your very high Specialization stat, than to choose Keen Blunt for that extra, you know, 10% more damage on that particular skill, right? And you die using it. So this is how you should make your decisions. Cool, let's get into the skills, and I will talk about all of our choices, the tripods, the runes, and also then we're going to get into the gear tripod selections and why. Starting from the top, we have multiple rocket launcher. This is a very nice skill, in your top 3 best DPS skills, so you should definitely have it. This is the way you tier it up for the most damage. We have a blue Gale Wind rune on it, simply because the whole purpose of a Specialization build is to actually get to enter bombardment mode as often as possible. So the sooner you get all of the skills out of the way, the better it is as a general idea. Flamethrower, a very important skill in the Specialization build, simply because it increases the firepower gauge, right? And we want to get it to tilt so we can enter bombardment mode. We have firepower control, ranged flame, and azure flame. Firepower control here is the only way to go, and we're going to get into this tripod selection in a moment. Ranged flame can easily be replaced by shield if you feel that a shield for yourself is a better option, or if you by any chance have barricade as an engraving. This is another way to go here. Azure flame is the only way to go because it gets the skill off faster, and during boss fights you don't really have time to sit here doing scorching flame forever until you get it out. I have a blue wealth rune on it. To my shame, I was lazy on the Omnium stars and I do not yet have the legendary wealth rune, which should be attached to flamethrower without any question. Next skill is swing, and this one comes at a cost, the cost of me not using napalm shot. Now, napalm shot is your sort of class synergy as an artillerist, where stagger damage is increased by 20% for all party members on the target, which is nice to have. However, I have given this up just because swing is too nice of a skill for the counter it offers, a very fast counter at that, and also you can cast it from a range and it jumps to the target you want to counter. Fantastic for the current endgame content such as Valtan, Descaluda, right, the Guardian Raid. Super cool as a counter skill. And also as a mobility skill. Swing, super nice to position yourself better during specific boss fights, especially future Legion raids, for example, that are going to have even more insane mechanics than Valtan does, and swing is a very nice skill. Worth giving up the class synergy for the stagger damage to take this skill. Swing has a quick recharge rune, but it can also very easily have a purify rune if you need to dispel yourself, for example Valtan Gate 1, but I use it for with quick recharge right now. We have have quick attack and advanced movement. These two tripods are very nice, and this one makes it a range, and this one makes it attack faster. You shouldn't tier swing up higher than 7 points, the middle tripod, simply because you can use the extra skill points that you would invest here. You can use them in skills like air raid, for example, which is in the top 2 your highest DPS skills, and you can get this one above 10. For example, I have air raid, quick fire, flame barrage, and the big one. This is the way to go for the most damage. Arguably, you can change quick fire to, for example, concussion if you need more stagger damage on a particular target. But these two are very nice to have for more DPS. Air raid has a Gale Wind rune, a purple Gale Wind at that. We have then the summon turret. This has armor destruction, enhanced turret, and laser turret. This is the way to go here because you need the armor destruction skill since you're not taking enhanced shell, same as in a swiftness build. And these two tripods do the most damage for the turret. Turret has a bleed rune because you can always have it up, or almost always, with a specialization critical build, for example, and it's a very nice rune to have on the turret. We have then forward barrage, another very important skill for a specialization build because it recovers the firepower gauge by a lot. We have firepower control, quick prep, and dancing explosion. Arguably, you don't have to use quick prep here. You can also use enhanced barrage, assuming you already have a legendary Gale Wind rune. You can definitely change this for more damage. Forward barrage is also a counter skill, but obviously because you're going to use it a lot to gain firepower meter, you're not really going to have it there ready for you to counter with it, right? You have a I have a purple wealth rune, epic wealth rune on it, but you can also have a legendary wealth here and an epic on a flamethrower, or just keep it as an epic and use legendary on flamethrower. Cool, this is the way to go here. And homing barrage, in the top 2 best DPS skills you have, guiding enhancement, weak point detection, and power bomb. Lastly, we have the energy field, again without any rune, tiered up to the last tier. You have to tier this up here. The energy field is one of your skills that make you an artillerist. Very nice to have, very useful to get off all of your skills, very useful to cast in a specialization build, very useful to cast before entering bombardment mode, so you can have already a shield as you're standing there immobile in the turret, so you can be protected at least from damage even if you do stand in some mechanics. So mandatory, especially for the specialization build, but also for the swiftness one, right? I use this firepower concentration. If you get used to this skill, and if you get used to the idea that whenever you're under 30% HP, you stay there on purpose a little bit longer before potting up, just so you can get half of your firepower meter filled up by pressing the shield skill. Very nice, comes in very handy. I'm going to explain it to you when we get to the build part. Then we have a quick prep, but this skill works perfectly fine in a specialization build, also with the shield duration. As I was telling you about, you go inside bombardment mode and you have this. It lasts so long on you throughout your first 2 bombardment mode skills, and then you can cast the bombardment mode shield and be constantly shielded, basically. A very nice way to play with increased duration, and also of course solid shield. Here we have the barrage howitzer, no rune. We have the focus fire. I have a purple Gale Wind on it, so we can get it out of the way even faster. We have energy cannon also with a legendary Gale Wind rune attached to it. And this is my build for my skill build for this particular stat build. Let's go through the tripods. We're going to start with the most important ones. Obviously, we talk about homing barrage. We have weak point and power bomb. This is your hardest hitting skill, so this one takes tripod priority, regardless of what stat you're playing, specialization or swiftness. We have then air raid, which again, flame barrage, the big one, both of these take priority. Then we have multiple rocket launcher. All 3 of these generally take priority, but access denied and quick barrage more priority than flame rocket. And then we come to a very important tripod, but it cannot take priority over the DPS skills, simply because these just do so much damage, and that is for where is it, my forward barrage, right? We have firepower control. Absolutely mandatory to have as high level of the skill as possible, because you get more firepower gauge, which eventually is the purpose of this whole build. The same goes for quick prep, for example. The shorter the cooldown, the better it is. Then we move to flamethrower, which again, this tripod absolutely quintessential for this build to have as high as possible. But also Azure Flame here is a very nice thing to have. And then after these, we can go to Summon Turret, for example, Enhance Turret, Laser Turret. This is a very nice skill. We can go to the Energy Field, where energy increase lasts even longer, right? This is a very nice tripod to have. And then lastly, we can move to tripods such as Quick Fire here on the Air Raid, or we can move to Forward Barrage, Dancing Explosion, these kinds of, you know, at the bottom, no priority really tripods. This was for the tripods. Now let's get into a quick rotation so I can actually show you what is the whole purpose of the build and how you should think about it. So the key is to reach firepower level 3 as quickly and as often as possible. This is how the buff looks, excuse me, and during this buff we not only get the buff benefits, which is 30% extra damage to everyone, but also it triggers the firepower enhancement engraving at level 3, it giving us 40% extra crit chance, which is massive. Another key component of the rotation that we're about to do is the barrage enhancement engraving, which again increases the damage that we do during barrage mode. This is barrage mode, right? And these skills get damage increase because of this engraving. But also very important is that it removes the cooldown of entering barrage mode every time we hit firepower level 3. So that's why it's so important. That's why all of our skills with the tripods and everything are focused on hitting that level 3 as fast as possible, right? The runes that you have to set on them, etc. So how that looks is, for example, if I would exit barrage mode, right, I would have a cooldown on re-entering it. But because of that engraving, if I would use my awakening skill, it would quickly fill up my firepower meter and the cooldown would just disappear. I would be able to enter it again and do massive damage with these skills once more. Having that said, let me show you how a normal rotation would look like. We're gonna do 2 normal rotations and then at the end one with an awakening skill, so you can see that as well. We're gonna start as always with the Summon Turret for the armor destruction buff, then Forward Barrage, then Flamethrower. We cast our 2 biggest hitting skills and then another Forward Barrage, then multiple rocket launcher as well, and we are entering firepower level 3. We cast Howitzer first, we cast then Energy Field. We can do a shield in the middle if you're playing Adrenaline, for example, to refresh the buff. Then we cast Focus Fire, and by this time Howitzer has refreshed its cooldown. Another turret, a homing barrage and an air raid, again during the same level of the firepower enhancement. You also have time for a multiple rocket launcher if I wouldn't be lazy, and then again we start from the beginning. Forward Barrage, Flamethrower, plant a turret, another Forward Barrage. You can use a swing in between if you need to or if you want to counter. Then we plant a landmine, we use another Forward Barrage, air raid, and then we're going to enter firepower level 3. Again, Howitzer to start off with for the armor destruction debuff. Remember, Howitzer casts it. Then Energy Field, and then Focus Fire. We can do Howitzer once more. We can exit, landmine again, multiple rocket launcher because we have cooldown still on the air raid. We hope to land the air raid in this little space here, and we did. We cast an awakening skill, refresh all of our cooldowns once more, enter again bombardment mode, do a Howitzer, do an Energy Field, again with a shield on yourself if you're playing Adrenaline to refresh the buff, Focus Fire, and then at the end again a Howitzer, exit, and resume with your 2 biggest hitting skills. And this is basically the gist of the rotation. Again, it's more important for you to do mechanics right as opposed to get everything going here. We can also dash out of the turret, right? With the most recent update, we still get a cooldown on it, so it's a waste of a bombardment mode, for example. But if you have to, you have to. If you don't yet have the legendary grade wealth rune, or maybe you don't even have an epic grade wealth rune, it's still worth to play this build and focus on getting those wealth runes if you're interested in Artillerist, because this is the build that does the most damage at end game. So it's pointless for you to start going for a swiftness set of accessories and a swiftness set of gear, relic gear, just because you don't have those 2 runes, and the build itself might actually feel a little bit off, which it does. If you would be wearing 2 blue grade wealth runes, it would most likely not feel very well to keep hitting that level 3 firepower buff before the cooldown of the turret expires. modifiers, right? So you can take full advantage of the barrage enhancement engraving. However, getting a legendary wealth rune is doable with the Omnium stars, right? And also getting the purple wealth rune is also very doable from the sources that you have available. Lastly, let's take a look at the gems and the cards. You need damage and cooldown gems on all three of your hardest hitting regular skills: homing barrage, air raid, and multiple rocket launcher. You can also take a damage and cooldown skill and cooldown gem on forward barrage. You can take a cooldown gem on flamethrower and a damage gem on summon turret. Very important is that you would also have a damage gem on your barrage skill. This is very, very nice and very important to have, especially in a specialization build. Lastly, in terms of cards, the best set is the Light of Salvation, assuming it's 12-piece awakening or above. But if this one is not ready, if you don't have it, then you can also use the Lost Wind Cliff set, again at 12-piece awakening, because it gives us the extra crit rate, which comes in handy for a specialization build, as we don't have a lot of it from the crit stat anyway. As for relic sets of gear, I highly recommend the hallucination set. I recommend this set regardless if you're playing crit as your secondary stat or swiftness. This is a fantastic set in general. Not only it gives us crit rate, but also gives us extra damage to foes, which is very, very nice. As another choice, I would recommend the Poem of Salvation, another fantastic choice for a specialization artillerist. Cool. This was everything for my specialization build. I wish you a great day until my next video. I will see you soon, and take it easy.